Hey, friends, welcome to another installment of Wellness Wednesdays. I'm glad that you're here, and we're going to have another great conversation on tonight. You know how we do when we come on. Definitely want to let you chime in and let me know, or I got all tongue twisted there. Chime in where you're from, city and state. That's how we roll. And if you care about the people that are in your circle, I want you to share this broadcast with them. We're going to have a great conversation tonight talking about therapy, relationships, and entanglements. Yeah, we're going to go there. We're going to talk about it. And so I'm glad that you guys are here with me on tonight. Again, as you're coming on in, let me know where you're chiming in from. Looking forward to having a great conversation. I'm going to share this on my end as we get started, and then we'll be on our way. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Awesome. Great. So, friends, Gilly, you're already on. Love it. Good to see you, Gilly. Glad you're here with us, sister. Um, yeah, this is going to be a great conversation tonight. Again, as you're coming on in, let me know where you're chiming in, city and state. And then also let us know if this is your first or second time with this, third time, or you're OG, you've been with us from the beginning. We'd love to shout you out. And then also share this with your friends, your network. I decided to do Wellness Wednesdays. It had been a kind of a vision of mine a while back to really expose what I was having conversations with my clients about, and in my office or virtually, if you will, because I felt like conversations that I was having really benefited a wider majority of people as it relates to helping people make transitions, helping people navigate careers, helping people cultivate their own sense of self-awareness. And so I wanted to create an opportunity for us to engage, for us to have a dialogue, conversation, if you will, to help people expand their mental and emotional wellness. Because whether you realize it or not, your thoughts and your emotions have impact on your decisions. And we know that our decisions inevitably lead us to places that we want to go or lead us to places that we don't want to go. And so we can cultivate a better understanding of our thoughts and emotions and actually be able to recognize those things and to rewrite our path, if you will, and into ways that are empowering us and leading us to the future that we want. Then we can really make steps towards fulfilling our potential. So I'm glad that you guys are here with me tonight. Again, as you're coming on in, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state, and we're going to have a great conversation. So I have two very special guests here with me tonight, two great friends, and so I'm going to bring them on now as we introduce our conversation, and going to have them introduce yourself. So let me bring my brother Ramel on. Ramel, good to see you, brother.
Hey man, great to see you, James.
Awesome. And then my good sister Rakita. There we are. Rakita, how are we doing?
Hi, good to see you, James.
Oh man, so good to see both of you guys. Um, I love talking with therapists, and I love talking with especially therapists of color. We have a special love language, uh, and uh,
Yeah.
and so I'm glad you guys are here with me tonight. Um, Rakita, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first, and then Ramel, I have you follow. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, hi. Thank you, James, for even having me on your platform. And thank you to all the viewers who are watching. My name is Rakita Wright. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor based in North Greensboro, North Carolina. I own a private practice called Wright's Care Services, where we serve children and families who are experiencing trauma, depression, anxiety, and many other life stressors. And I myself, I've been counseling for over 12 years. Really, really love what I do. I primarily work with women who are going through transition, whether it's relationship or some type of just major life transition, because I was once in a place in life where I had a major life transition. So now I try to teach other women how to navigate their lives and get through those difficult spaces, to help them live the best version of themselves. So I'm so
Awesome.
glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here with your sister. Thank you that you're with us. Ramel.
Yeah, so my name is Romel Graves. I am also a therapist in Columbus, Ohio. I do work with couples. I cut my teeth in substance abuse, so I do work with individuals struggling with addiction as well, and people who are experiencing anxiety and depression. Um, so yeah.
Awesome. Man, so when I decided to do this, like I said, share it with you guys backstage, I intentionally plan on talking about just therapy and the relationships, and the benefit of therapy, why it's important, what kind of things should probably prompt us to seek therapy, and then relationships, just from a general standpoint, what does it look like to be in a healthy relationship? And then this whole thing happened with, for those who are not familiar with, Will and Jada Pickett. And I'm not here to debate rights or wrongs or take a side, but I did want to create a conversation, to speak into that from my unique insight and from my fellow therapists' unique insight as it relates to how do things like this come along. I think obviously an added pressure is they're living in the public eye. And so we're going to have a great conversation tonight as we talk about that, entanglements, and some other things going on as it relates to relationships and therapy. And so what I actually want to begin with is to just have you guys share a little bit of your own story, as it relates to why counseling, what compelled you to even jump in the field in the first place. And we'll start there, and then I'll ask some other questions for us to jump into. So I guess, Romeo, you can jump on in first, and then Rakita, you can follow afterwards as well.
Cool. Great question. Logistically, I was initially in school for pharmacy once upon a time, many moons and probably many pounds ago. And sophomore year, I got a D plus in chemistry 121, which was affectionately known as the weed out course. And so history has shown that it successfully weeded me out. And being in ministry, even in my youth and teenage years, and I wanted to find a way where I could combine scripture and therapy. And so I kind of like made a pact with God, because I felt like He wanted me to go to seminary. I said, hey, if I'm gonna go to seminary, God, I got to find a seminary that's gonna prepare me to be licensed to do therapy. So I did that, went to DTS, along with obviously you, James. Shout out to DTS. Shout out to the new president of DTS as well. And I was really inspired by my own childhood. As I mentioned before, my passion is couples work. And my mom, she was married, I think, for about 10 and 11 years. And she, got divorced. And my dad, he's been married. I don't know how long my dad been married. I think 29, 30 years, something of that nature. And so, just seeing the two dynamics and, different family systems and how I've been impacted by my own family system, really inspired me to want to, combine both my experiences and, book knowledge, and obviously, what the Holy Spirit gives me to help and encourage others. So that's pretty much why I pursued therapy.
That's good. That weed out course, it weeded you out, and now you were here.
Yeah.
That's good, brother. Thank you for sharing, man.
All right. So I will hop right in. So something similar to Ramel's story, I was in school. I started out as an occupational therapy major. And when it came down to, because I always wanted to help people. So when it came down to the comprehensive exam, I could not pass the mental health portion for some reason. And so I fell out of that program. And so I had to switch my major to something else that was somewhat comparable. So I switched to rehabilitation studies, which again was another degree pathway that I could still help people. And so I ended up doing exceptionally well in that program. And after getting my bachelor's degree, I went to obtain my master's degree in counseling from North Carolina A&T. And I grew up in the home of a pastor, minister. And so all of my life, I've seen my parents just really pour into people and counsel people. And so I think that's also been embedded into me, just kind of growing up and just observing them. And so I was like, that's a pretty good way to give back, and it's it seemed very rewarding. So I chose that path, and again, I've been able to mix my own spirituality with the practical principles and be able to infuse both of those two, and it's really been a great combination to me, and I really enjoyed working with the people that I work with. Diverse people, where they're from different socioeconomic status, and it doesn't matter. What I have seen as a common theme, whether you have money or whether you don't have money, people want help. And so I've been blessed to utilize my gifts to help people, and I'm just going to continue to do that as long as I'm living.
Awesome, man. You guys are dynamic. I love it. I love it. So this really prompts a question, probably a pertinent question as it relates to therapy. When I think about therapy and the benefit of it, obviously when we come to, when we're born, obviously we're like empty slates, if you will. And it's really those early experiences with our primary caregivers, namely our mother or father or whoever may have raised us, that really start to shape how we're going to relate to people down the road by those early experiences and by what they pour into us in those early experiences and engagements really shapes what we feel like we have to give and what we're deficient in. And as I always say, we can only give what we have. And so I want you guys to kind of speak into that from your own perspective as a therapist about the impact of family systems. And I guess to even break it down, when we talk about family systems, actually I have you do it. When we talk about family systems, Ramel, what do you mean by family systems? And kind of speaking to that.
Yeah, so great question. So family systems is basically, if I can put it in its simplest form, is how you were shaped primarily by your parents, and like how your family system adjusted to stressors, right? Or problems, or even how you were shaped by a question I love to ask my clients first session is, what was the thermostat of your home, right? The emotional thermostat, excuse me, of your home. Was it cold? Was it warm? Did it feel like walking on eggshells? So it's how the family system responds to, like I said, various stressors, and the roles that you played in your family system to keep the homeostasis, even if it was an unhealthy homeostasis, right? Every person in the family usually plays a role or two, puts on a couple hats, and that impacts how you respond to stressors as an adult as well. So keeping it in its simplest form, a family system is, hey, how pretty much how I was impacted by my child rearing and events that happened to me in my childhood, and how that's pretty much shaped me and made me to shape my responses, how I respond to different stressors as an adult.
That's good. That's good. You want to speak in that with that a little bit more, Rakita, if you want.
Yeah. So family systems, I think Ramel did a great explanation of describing what it is. Again, is how you respond to different situations, because what happens in our childhood definitely impacts us as how we respond in our adult world. And I always say, it's better to try to fix a child before they become an adult, because definitely we have generational trauma that is passed down from our families,
Yeah.
depending on what we see in our household, again, how we respond to things, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to our interactions with other people, our mood and temperament, our finances. So it just encompasses the holistic person. Our family structure and family system really shapes how we are as adults. And we go back and try to trace back, well, why am I making this decision? And so you do clearly have to think back and trace back, okay, well, what did I see in my household, or what did I see my family do or respond in this situation? And so again, family systems is very important, and how we're raised and what we learn in our homes is so important. And not saying that we learn things wrong, but sometimes as we become older and we begin to develop our own views about things, we have to unlearn some things in order to be better people and be better adults.
That's good. That's good, man. You just gave me two of the things I want to say. As we're talking, feel free to go ahead and drop your questions in. Um, we're going to be answering some of those too towards the end, and even probably in the process of us having this conversation, we'll be able to answer some of those. So you guys can drop those in as we go. Both of you guys said some insightful stuff, and then Rakita, you just said something I think was significant as it relates to um, something, one, not always having to be negative, that we acquire or that we learn. It could be simply something that really that we held on to help us survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not helping us thrive, and so it's what are we going to do to unlearn that and replace that with something that's going to be more empowering. Which leads me to a question I want to ask both of you guys, as it relates to really getting behind the curtain, if you will, to even uncover what are some of those things that may not be serving you for your stage and season of life. What are some of those kind of, if you will, prompt questions that you guys may ask or have someone ask themselves to help them kind of start to self-assess where they're at and the journey that they have taken individually, and helping them to observe some of those patterns or behaviors or thoughts that just may not be serving them.
Okay. So,
Go ahead, Ricky.
okay. So that's a good one. In counseling, I do a lot of assessment and reflection, questions towards that individual. And, I always ask the person, what is it that's serving you right now? I try to get people, to my clients, to be present and live in the present moment versus, sometimes we can plan for the future, and it's good to have plans, because I love to plan as well. But sometimes we just need to think about the here and now and what's happening in our life, like today, what's important, what's not important, are you overcommitting to things? Are you, saying yes to things that's not really serving you? And how do you learn to let go and set those appropriate boundaries with individuals, with family members, because a lot of times we can find ourselves burnout, or having certain struggles because we have overcommitted ourselves. We're just saying yes to everything and not really saying yes to things that are meaningful and purposeful to us. And so I really try to teach my clients that to honor yourself, honor yourself with what's important to you, and don't be so consumed on the opinions of other people and what they're thinking. And because you can find yourself really burnt out and really tired and exhausted of just trying to live up to other people's standards and not really taking care of yourself and honoring yourself.
That's good, man. Living up to other people's expectations, that can really be emotionally exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it really gets to that point of, like you said, of having sometimes people not even realizing they're living so much for other people's expectations that they haven't assessed to assess and ask themselves, is this something that I really want, or is this something that this person wants for me? And
Yes.
granted, some of those things may be good that they want for you. Um, it may just not be your unique path and unique things that you need to take on and pursue for your own personal well-being and for your own personal happiness in that regard. Um, why is it that you think that people, and I always bring this conversation up, especially when we're talking about therapy, because we're people of color. Why is it that you think we have a hard time in our culture um, engaging in therapy and asking for help when we are really at moments of transition, when we need them, or even, as I would say, it doesn't have to even be something significant uh,
Mm-hmm.
going on for you to engage in therapy. But sometimes, as um, in our community, we use therapy as a means of intervention. So when everything hits the fan, hey, we're going to get help, or somebody might have to do an intervention on us. But it's not as common to use therapy as a means of prevention, of actually avoiding us uh, getting too far down the rabbit hole, so to speak. Why do you think that is, Rakita?
So I think one of the reasons is within our culture, we're taught to be strong, that we can take on the burdens of the world. We don't need help. I think we're taught that if we pray about it, everything will be okay.
Yeah,
But we do
Yeah.
have to put some action into whatever our problems are and whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So yes, I'm a believer. I believe in prayer, but I also believe in the professionals that God has put on this earth to be able to help us to get through certain struggles and certain distresses. And I just think as a culture, we're just taught to be strong. We can handle it, just to go through it, or just kind of just keep going through those struggles without addressing that root problem. And before you know it, it's just piled up into a mountain. And we come in then when it's a crisis versus prevention and being proactive in our
Yeah.
emotional health and in our relationships. A lot of times couples come in when they're at the breaking point of their relationship, and they have exhausted. They fuss, they have fought, they have separated, they've done everything except try therapy first. And so, they've exhausted everything. So I think just as a culture and just as African Americans, we're just taught to be strong, to pray about it, go talk to our pastor, and everything will be okay. But we're not taught, or we don't seek professional help to get those practical tools to help us get through everyday life and to learn to manage those stressors and those challenges that we're going through.
that's good. That's good. Did you want to say anything else to that, Ramel?
Yeah. I was having some connection issues, but I think I heard you correctly. What comes to mind, I can't think of the artist, but a gospel artist a couple years back made a song. As long as I got King Jesus, I don't need anyone else. And you know, we laugh about it. I think it's Soda. It was a great song, actually.
Yeah,
But great song, but poor theology, or
yeah,
poor and practice, right? Because we see Adam, he got everything in the garden, right? He got animals. I mean, he got the Trinity, he got everything,
yeah.
and God still says like it's not good for
Mm,
man to be alone, right?
Mm.
And so specifically for Black people, as Rakita kind of shared, it's been in our culture, and I think because of systematic injustices and racism, even in the health fields from the past, right? It wasn't too many Black therapists, right? And the medical field, has done some harm to the Black community.
Yeah.
So that coping skill of, just keep everything in house, you strong enough to get through it. That was right for that time, right? I mean, that's what we had to do. But as time has passed on, I think that's an outdated um, cognition. It's an outdated coping skill, of just bear everything, you can get through it, and then you add in a layer of Christianity, right? Or poor theology. I won't say Christianity, but just poor theology of like, yeah, just pray about it, or we try to cliche something, and you ask how you're doing. You're not blessed and highly favored. You're struggling, right? With
Yes.
depression. You're struggling with your eating. You just had an argument on the way to church. I've been there. Or you
Yeah.
just had to
Yes.
holler at your kids right on the way to church. How you doing? uh, I'm stressed.
Yeah.
Right. But in Christian culture, I've seen something on Facebook that people got problems wearing a mask, but they've been wearing a mask to church long before the corona. Right? We perfect wearing a mask,
Man.
Mm.
and trying to make sure that everything is good at home when it's really not. And silence only breeds the shame that is there. And so I think this is why Scripture, implores us, commands us to confess your sins to one to another.
Yeah.
Right? Like we could just go to Jesus in our prayer closet by ourselves. But God will only do some things through other people that He will not do just between you and Him. And so it's really important for us to lose that outdated coping mechanism, or thinking that we can handle it all by ourselves, and just me, Jesus, and speaking in tongues. We gonna fix this thing, because God has
Mhm.
put other people here as a conduit of His healing.
It's so amazing that we are biologically wired for love and belonging and connection. And as you just, stated that so perfectly, that we need community. And, it's just interesting that God could have easily created um, humanity and the earth by himself, if you will, excuse me, humanity specifically. But we see him saying, let us make man in image. So it was just not only him joining in that process of making humans, but inviting the Holy Spirit, inviting Jesus, if you will. It was a communal thing. And that speaks to this whole community aspect, that it's impossible for us to really do life well without relationships.
Yes.
And it is, amazing just from when we talk about attachment and how kids, as infants, develop their attachment styles very early on by the ways that they relate to their caregivers, because they need love. Dr. Kurt Thompson's book on the soul of shame, he talks about this aspect that what helps us to make sense of our story is by how did he say it? The way we make sense of our own story is by having parents who've made sense of their own stories. So, to the degree that we've made sense of to the degree that our parents rather have made sense of their own story, their own journey, have reconciled things within themselves and reconciled things within their own relationships, it helps us to make those same type of decisions even early on. It is it's just really remember having a conversation even just now as I'm thinking about it myself, um, with my father before I got married. This will be almost 10 years now. It's going through our grad program, and you might remember this, Ramel, that we had to complete at least 50 individual counseling sessions before we could complete our degree. And pretty much there was a way of making sure you weren't crazy before they give your license to do somebody else. to counsel somebody else. And there were some things that came up in there, my relationship with my father, that I had to reconcile with, that had to have a conversation with him about as it relates to our unique relationship. And one of the things that came out of that is, a part of, um, I won't say my inability to make sense of my own story, but perhaps my short-sightedness in making sense of certain parts of my journey was really because of my relationship with my father, and which was probably an extension of his relationship with his father. And like I said before, that we can only give what we have. And I believe my father, a great man, still is a great man, really gave me what was the best of what he could give me, even with the other things um, that did not come with that. One of those things was really just our sense of emotional connectedness. He is a man of the baby boomer generation. And so a model of fatherhood that existed and really still exists for a lot of people today was, as long as I'm providing financially for my household, then I'm being a good father. And that is absolutely correct, but it's also incomplete because it doesn't make room for the emotional connectedness that you need within your family to build those relationships. And so I had to have this conversation again with my own father, just reconciling our own lack of emotional connectedness and how that's impacted me. So I had this conversation, one, because I needed to, but also because I don't want to bring some of those dynamics into my relationship with my wife and our marriage, and eventually my children, which is, call it providence, that I have a son, a 5-year-old son, who loves to hang out with daddy. He's a daddy's boy, and through and through. And so when I just kind of segue into this whole kind of conversation with Will and Jada, and like I said, everybody has an opinion. I'm not here to debate the intricacies of what went down in the relationships and give you a timeline. What we're here to do as therapists, to kind of speaking to that from our perspective, as therapists and clinicians. And so when I was actually, before I would, as you guys observe, and this news of Will and Jada and whatever you happen to know about it came to light, what were your initial, I'll have you go first, Rakita, and then you, Ramel. What were your initial reactions, thoughts, considerations, if you will, as you observe what was just going on in their relationship?
So as I watched the video, I think it was maybe over the weekend or late last week. One, I want to say that, as a couple, they were very brave to, speak out about their
Yes.
private matters to millions of people, to the world. As you know, they're both celebrities, and so their private life is hardly private. And so I was want to say that they were very courageous to speak out about to try to clear up anything and make amends with the public. But as I watched the video, as I watched the red table, um, I saw two individuals who are, one human, two, who are in a relationship, a partnership agreement, and that has, has flaws, that has made mistakes, and has, acknowledged mistakes. Then I saw two people who were, very hurt. From what I saw from the body language, I think it was an awkward conversation to have amongst the public. I think they were very brave because they didn't have to do any of that. But I think the details and the conversation was awkward for them both. As I watched Will, his facial expression and body language, although he said that, he was good, or I'm going to get you back, or whatever. We're still talking about two married people who have committed to each other, who have a covenant relationship with each other. He appeared, to be very hurt in what had come out and what has been now exposed of a private situation that has now been made public. And again, couples go through various situations, various struggles. And I think, over time, our relationships have different types of situations that they go through. But it's again, about, having that communication, being able to share and talk about, what has happened or what's going on in our relationship, that you feel the need to, one, develop an emotional relationship or emotional attachment or physical attachment to someone else. And so it's really about having that level of vulnerability with each other, which a lot of times couples they don't have, or they don't know how to develop, that breeds that trust and that honesty and that communication. Again, I think that they've been married for years, but again, I think just watching the video, in my professional opinion, there is some hurt there. Hopefully, it can be repaired and they can get their own individual counseling. And then looking at Jada's, her story, her truth, because we all have our own truths. She did, it seemed like she didn't want to state what it was. And so, her husband had to ask her, what do you mean entanglement? And so,
Entanglement?
Let's call it what it is. You had an affair. And so, that's just what it is. And so just being able to be honest and take responsibility of, what we did. We're not perfect. Everyone has flaws. So let's just work through our responsibility of owning up to our truth. And, if your truth is, you did X, Y, and Z, okay, you did it. And, sometimes individuals aren't able to handle the truth. And so, again, in couples work, you have to do the work. It's two people that are put together who are flawed, who are trying to hopefully work together towards a common goal of being vulnerable, knowing what your partner's love language is. And, before you get to that point of depletion, what intervention needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, I'll have you share too before I share my comments too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah. I want to definitely second Rakita's statement of, I thought it was incredibly courageous, brave, and transparent for them to address it in the style that they did, before millions of people. And, we know the internet is undefeated, and the internet is going to have a field day, which the internet has.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of y'all seen any of the memes and little mixes of the entanglement remixes, but to do that, I think speaks to a lot of their character. They got dragged in the media, especially as Will put it, Black Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. But to address it like that, to a lot of just character. It takes a lot of moving beyond shame, and a lot of people have said what they said online, or I like to call them internet gangsters, right? But they're in entanglements and they don't even know it.
Hello.
True.
And so that was my first thought. I just thought it was like, wow, this is pretty cool that they're doing this, in front of the world, so to speak. My second thoughts was specifically for Jada, and I was just again, like you said, James, not to excuse or whatever, not to give permission to what she did or validate what she did, but I began to thinking of family systems, and Jada's mom, as many people may know, she struggled with addiction. and she's come out pure gold. Let's give a shout out to Jada's mom. She fine. Lord have mercy on my soul, Jesus. Don't let me be 60 and see Jada's mom out here. Nah. But all jokes aside, you know. You said no.
Hopefully not. I hope
no.
Chrissy didn't do that. He's not gonna have no entanglement.
No, but all jokes aside, you know, I think of, you know, again, going back to family systems and the roles we play. And it's a whole literature on adult children of alcoholics, ACOAs, or adult children of addicts. And usually when you are the family hero in the family system, and the family hero is the one who pretty much, you know, they're the model child, right? They're the one who get A's. They're very successful, right? And Jada probably is that in her family. She's very successful. And so one thing, when you're the family hero, you can develop codependent relationships where you are the parent, the codependent relationship that needs to be needed, right? You're the partner in the codependent relationship where your sense of like self-worth and self-efficacy is pretty much defined on fixing or helping or healing. And so I can see, you know, through a clinical lens, how this quote unquote entanglement, right, developed. And, you know, it's obviously it's unfortunate, but I think it's really good for the world to see how when you know, what stress does to boundaries, right? You know, when you're in a very stressful situation, and it started out, sounds like, and the way they were saying the kid's name, it sounded like he was like a kid of the family. You know, they were saying Og. That really stuck out to me. They weren't saying Og. It's like, oh, you know, Og. Like, we took him in. Like, he was, you know, unfortunately, I think he became almost like Jada's project. And I think she even mentioned, you know, it really gave her insight into her own codependency, where people who are playing the healing role in the codependent relationship, they attempt to fix others and thinking irrationally that they're fixing themselves. When actually you are just, you know, I hate to say it, but you are using that other person to distract you from your internal pain. So I thought it was very interesting, very courageous, and especially, you know, through a clinical lens, very insightful on how, you know, what codependency can look like, and how you need to have insight into what your true motives are when helping others.
Yeah. And you know what's so unique, because you can see, like you said that, Rakita, that you could still, even though it's been a number of years now, just being able to say, it wasn't, from my observation, she wasn't really fully at terms with all the dynamics of what went on with Og. And so you can just hear, you can kind of see that she was having trouble admitting that to herself, and saying that out in public. And I think that's really how, in part, because we all struggle with shame. We all have shame triggers. And love Brene Brown's work. You know, she talks about how shame, you know, needs three things to survive: isolation, secrecy, and fear of judgment. And when we don't fear that we have that emotional safety created, you know, shame will continue to grow exponentially. And this, so I definitely agree with you guys. I think it was courageous. I don't think they had to say anything to the public, but just because of the nature of their life and what they have lived through, what they're doing with their life, it's almost like no way to separate it. If you'll just, if they've lived in the public eye for so long, and they both have their, which is why I think I wanted to start off talking about family of origin. They have their own family of origin issues. They have, remember Will saying in an interview, you know, almost, I guess it's been about a couple of months ago, I may have been on the Breakfast Club if I'm not mistaken. He had said that it took him 40 something odd years, 45 years or so, to realize that he could not outperform his childhood trauma. And so for a good portion of his life, instead of actually trying to resolve his trauma from his life experiences, he was trying to outperform it. He was trying to outrun it. So when you think about that for a moment, for a person that is, Will is in his 50s, and he's saying just several years ago, pretty much rather recently, that from the time that he's been born, even up until now, that he's been trying to resolve his trauma, not necessarily through therapy, but by outperforming it to try to resolve it. That really can shed light on how these type of situations with him and Jada come along. And then, like you said, with Jada's family, with her own codependence with her mother and dealing with that addiction behavior. So it's like a perfect storm. And so when you have all of the pre-existing issues going on with, if you will, no sense of diagnosis, nobody's getting help for their own stuff, it's a matter of time before all that impacts and comes to a head. And obviously, from what they said, it looks like it had come to a head. They were almost through, and then Jada engages in this relationship. But like you said, it's not to excuse it. But when you're so deep into something of that nature, sometimes you don't see how you're damaging yourself and damaging other people in the process of doing that. Which is why I said to several people, I'm like, yes, on the surface it may seem predatory and manipulative, but I don't think that was her intent. I think that's what, if you look at it, what it looks like. But I don't think she intentionally said, "Hey, woke up one day and said I'm gonna move this guy in my home and we're gonna have this relationship together because I don't like what is going on with me and Will." But when you have stressors and you continue to push those boundaries, if you will, when you have stressors and you have needs. What we all know as therapists is that we're going to get those needs met some way or another, and we want to justify to ourselves. Get this: we're going to always justify to ourselves of why what we're doing is useful to get what we need, and so I think it was important, like I said, I really wanted to have this conversation with you guys to kind of shed light on that we're not we don't live in isolation, that we are all facing stressors that lead us in some ways to engage in behaviors that may not be healthy and may not be serving us for our future and for our current relationships that we are engaged in. I wanted to ask you guys a question from, if you were had Will and Jada in your office and they came to your office and says, "Hey, we need some therapy." From your perspective, what would be some goals that you would work with them on in helping them to move through kind of their marital discord, if you will, tension, for lack of better words? I have you jump in first, Rakita, and then you can follow along, Ramel, too.
Okay. Yeah, so with just like any other couples that I work with, I would get them, of course, they have the fame, they have money, they have all of that. But outside of that, what are your interests in each other? What are some, similar things that you all value together as a couple? Because at the end of the day, you have to have that foundation of values and what's important to you, still what you like as an individual, but also what is it that you enjoy as a couple to keep your relationship fresh, interesting. Are you all doing the same thing over and over and you kind of getting tired of what you're doing? So what can you do to keep that relationship fresh, and knowing what fills your emotional tank, as it relates to your relationship, that you can continue to give to each other without being depleted.
That's good. My and when you just think about, like I said, just the pace in which they live their lives, um, it's already, um, a challenge for me. I have a 5-year old, and I have a wife. I have no side pieces, nobody on the side, no entanglements whatsoever, and
Mhm.
it is a full load. And
Mhm.
Just clearing the air, James.
just clear the air. And I've man, even this pandemic, I've had to have some heart to hearts with my wife about improving our emotional connectedness in our relationship, having some of those conversations. So I'm thinking like, man, I can only imagine um, from the time that they were, they've been married 20 something years now, and just the pace of their life that they were driven by the pace of their life, not necessarily the pace of that their relationship needed, if you will, just because there were so many demands, so many pressures on the outside that I would say made it impossible for them to um, have those conversations that you just mentioned, Rakita. But it was a matter of just their immaturity that they were just so in so deep, they probably weren't taking time to even have these important conversations that just are needed to create stability in the relationship. Um, my wife, she's on. She said, "Oh, really? Yes, I have. I have no other relationships going on, babe. It's just me and you." And Ramel would kill me if I even attempted to have anything else outside of my wife. I love my wife. Look, we both got married. I think 10 years now. Ramel, I'll be 10 years in July next week.
Yep.
And so yeah, no entanglements. Um, and so I'm grateful. You want to say anything, Ramel?
Yeah. A couple things. If Will and Jada were my clients, I would go over, um, the differences and the similarities between a covenant and a contract. And the reason
Mm.
I bring that up is because it seemed like from the interview, Jada is like, well, we was done, so I kind of did my thing. And even, in times of maybe separation, right? A covenant, a covenant outlasts a contract,
Yeah.
right? So, not to get too deep, but in scripture, when God makes the covenant, even with us, even when we are adulterous, like Israel was with other false gods, or like, we are today with other, false gods or idols, God still keeps his covenant,
Yeah.
right? So, I would really want to um, break down covenant versus contract. And the thing is, a covenant, contracts are within covenants,
Hmm.
like there are agreements within the covenant, but the covenant is unbreakable, from a spiritual perspective, right? So and the another thing I would like to address with them, and this is hard sometimes when I do a fair recovery, but with the spouse, let's say if we treated this like an affair, with the spouse who was I like to call the offended party, like the offender and then the offended, how did Will participate in creating a climate where his wife felt the need to get her emotional needs met outside the marriage,
That's
right? And
much.
so, those are a couple of things. There's a litany of things I could say what I would look at, but those are the first two things that come to mind, because at the end of the day, though we may not be entangled with another person, you can be entangled with your job. You can have an unhealthy relationship with
Mhm.
your work. You can have an
Yeah.
unhealthy relationship with a vice. So entanglements can entanglements. They can look like a plethora of things.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
doesn't just have to be, with another person. Me, and my friend Aaron, we were talking about, just the mindsets of pastors, and sometimes pastors can have entanglement with the church.
Yeah.
And I heard a pastor say God spoke to him and said, "Hey, this is my bride," right?
Man.
Like, don't get your needs met by the church, right? Like that's unhealthy. So, you can have pastors that have entanglements with their church. So, and so this is where boundaries come in. And so I could go on, but I will also address boundaries. Where do I end and you begin, right? And how did having a loose view of boundaries on both of our parts help create a climate that this entanglement grew in? Because I can't grow oranges in Ohio in the wintertime, right? It has to be a certain climate for certain things to grow in. And
Right.
so those are a couple of things that I would love to address, and I would love for Will and Jada to pay me out of pocket. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so very much for your time. I want to honor your time, but I also want to give you guys a chance to share how people can connect with you outside of our broadcast on tonight. So, Rakita, how can people stay in touch with you if they want to do that?
Yes, so you can find me on Facebook at Rakita Wright LPC, and then you can also go to my website at www.reketa.com, and you can contact me through my website. You can schedule appointments, and you can find me that way.
Perfect. And then, Ramel, how can people stay in touch with you as well?
Yeah, you can go to associatesandfamilycare.com, and then go and look at our counselors. You can find me there, and also you can contact me through via email, Romel ROMELL at AIFamilyCare.com.
Perfect. Thank you guys so very much for attending with me. Going to pull you guys backstage now. Thank you guys again. Love you. Thank you for your support on tonight.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys again for attending. I love having these conversations each and every Wednesday. And so I want to invite you to be back with us on next week. And if this broadcast has been an encouragement to you, I want you guys to continue to share it with your friends, with your network of friends. And then also, before I leave, we also love to share with you and give you opportunity to engage in with a free resource or gift, if you will, from us. So if you want to visit that website, jamesperkins.help/wellness gift, we have a gift for you there that you can engage in. Until next week, peace. We'll see you then. Be safe.